All right, so before we actually flip our joints, mirror them, what we need to do is adjust the orientation. Okay, so the local rotation axes. So what that means, I'm going to use the leg here as an example, is that we want that when we rotate our legs, that they rotate across. Let me make sure. Make sure that you go to your tool settings when you have rotate, mostly rotate, and the translate or move, I guess it's called. Go make sure it's on object, either that or gimbal. Either one would be fine, but that way you get more accurate. Otherwise, it just uses world space. So we want to make sure we're doing object. Anyway, the idea here is that when we rotate our leg, we want to make sure that it is our Z axis that we see. Okay, that is being rotated. That when we rotate our legs, so that if I grab this one, okay, I'm just going to show you as an example here. So if you could see, if I have, let's click in there. So blue is obviously Z, red is X, and Y is green. Okay. Now the way that this works is that you always want X to be your roll axis, which means if as I go down, those will all be roll. And if you look, you'll notice that they are all X by default. So you don't have any issues with that. For the most part, that does not matter. What does matter is whether you have the Z-axis or the Y-axis as your primary axis, meaning the main motion. So remember before I was talking about the main motion of the leg is back and forth. I want to make sure that it's Z. That way, if I grab multiple joints, okay, this is one of the reasons. This is actually not the main reason. I'll show you the main reason why this matters. They will all move in the same direction. Now notice the knee does not. See how it's kind of bending one way and then the other is bending another way? That's because if I select it, let's go here, you'll see that Z is indeed there and Z is here. However, if I hit W, you can see the Z is pointing to the right on this one and the Z is pointing to the left on that one. What that means is that when I go to rotate, if I rotate this in a negative manner, so minus 40, if I take this, if I rotate in the same way, you see it's a positive number. So these are actually, they both have Z as the axis that I want, but they're pointing in opposite directions. So that's also an issue and something I want to make sure that I fix. Okay, so that's sort of the idea. I want everything to be in the right direction. Now, the reason why this matters, this local rotation axis is what we call it, is this. There's a thing called gimbal lock. So this is, if you recall, everything we're doing, right, it's on a computer, it's all code. So when it operates your rotations, it actually operates the rotations in an order. And what that means is that if I take this, and I'm going to switch over to gimbal mode so you can see. When I switch to gimbal mode, you can see I actually can't, you know how normally if you're in here and I go to object, I can grab it by the center? When it's actually rotating this, it's actually using this gimbal mode, all right? It's Euler rotations is what they call it. So it's going to rotate this. And now the idea is that each axis is parented to the axis above it, okay? So in this case, what that means is that the x-axis will be run last, then it's the y-axis, and then it's the z-axis. Z-axis will be first, then y, and then x last. So what that means is that when I rotate z, see the other axes rotate with it, right? When I rotate X, you'll see those do not rotate with it because they happen before X. So you can look at it like it's being parented, like X. And if I rotate Y, you'll see X rotates with it. However, Z does not. So the best way to look at it is that each axis is like parented to another axis, okay? So basically, the x-axis is parented to the y-axis, and the y-axis is parented to the z-axis. So when I rotate the z, all axes move as they should. However, when I rotate the y, it will only rotate the x because that one's underneath it. It will not rotate z because z is above it, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Now, it is possible to change what we call the joint rotation order, just to show you what that looks like. If you go down here, you'll see here's the rotate order. Right now it's set to XYZ, which is kind of weird because you think it would be the other way around, but that's just how they write it. So it's actually the opposite of what this shows. But you can change it to any of the options. Just leave it XYZ, but just be aware that can be changed. Anyway, okay, let's go back here. All right, so the reason why this matters is that if for some reason, let's say I took my leg and I was going to rotate it out this way, notice that now if I want to rotate my leg forward, there is no axis to do that. I cannot rotate this forward. However, if I were to rotate this on Z, I can rotate it side to side because that Y is readily available. So what ends up happening is that it's possible if you make the Y-axis your main axis, you could very easily end up with gimbal lock. So I'm just gonna kind of show you what that would be. So I'm just gonna go ahead and screw up this orientation so that you can see how this works. But then afterwards, you know, you can make your I'll fix it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make Y my main rotation. Why are we not rotating? Oh, because I'm in gimbal mode. Hang on, object. I'm going to make Y my main rotation. Okay, so now notice that Y is the one that's pointing in that direction. Okay, so I'm going to show you why this matters. Okay, so let's say I rotate my leg up. Okay, I'm going to put this back in gimbal mode so you can see. If I rotate it up, notice that now the Z and the X are like that. So let's say I'm just going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to put a key here. And, I got a lot of, let's make this a lot smaller. And then we'll say at 12, we'll put a key up right about there, okay? Then let's say, and I'm actually gonna turn gimbal off. So normally we animate in this mode. I'm like, oh, I want it that at 20, it goes over here and I key it. What you're gonna see is this. Hopefully you can see it. When I rotate it up, notice that that rotated up fine, okay? Because the axis is fine. But watch when it tries to go to the side. See how it actually went down and over? And that's because what we end up getting right here, if I put this in gimbal mode where we see the actual rotations, we have what's called gimbal lock. So in order for it to get over there, watch what happens. That's not it. Is it Alt this? Yeah. As I go individual, watch these axes. It has to rotate down and over in order to get the leg in that other position because of that gimbal lock. Okay, so what you want to do basically is have Z be your main axis that you're gonna rotate on all the time. So that way, like, it's very, very possible that I'm gonna rotate my leg back and forth. It's its main rotation. So I don't want to make it Y because then if I need to rotate to the side as well, it's gonna immediately be on gimbal lock. Okay, so I'm gonna undo a whole bunch to undo hopefully my orientation here as well. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's go back to this. So for instance, you know, if I have my arm here, and you can see right now, it's set up as Y is my main axis, which is not good. Because as soon as I rotate this, let's say forward, let's say I need to put his arm also outwards, I don't have an axis to do it. So I need to make sure that that axis, this axis, is actually my Z axis, not my Y axis. Because my main rotation is going to be my arm swinging side to side, right? So that's the idea behind it. It isn't possible to avoid gimbal lock, but you can try to avoid it, but it's not impossible to completely eliminate it. There are ways of there's little things you can do here and there to little helpers and stuff. But if you're going to be doing this method, that's what it's going to be. If you work inside of Unity at all, for any of you guys that are doing the coding, you'll notice that when you deal with orientation, I guess, rotation, it's quaternion. That is another method of dealing with rotations mathematically, and you don't end up with the gimbal lock situation. However, for animation purposes, it's odd. It's hard to animate too. Let's just put it that way. Like the axes aren't as it's a different way of working, so it's very difficult to actually animate in that method. So that's why we still use Eulers, even though they have this kind of flaw. There's Eulers and there's quaternion. Those are like the two methods. Anyway, I'm going to switch this back to object, and we're just going to go through and basically adjust all of our gimbal orientation. So what I want you to do is select the root joint, because that will highlight all of them. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go up here, and you're going to, if this for some reason is collapsed, see how there's like a little arrow? Just click on that, and you'll see this is object mode, and these are component modes, okay? So you'll notice that when you select the model here, if I go into component mode, you can see it's showing vertices, and then this one would be faces, this one's edges. That's what this does, is it's components. This object, this is component, okay? But what I want to do is have this selected. You're going to go to component mode, and then what I want you to do is click on the miscellaneous, okay? What that does is it's like extra stuff, I guess. I don't know. I'm going to turn off the geometry so it's not in the way. And then that will show me all of my local rotation axes. And I just basically want you to follow the same general process as myself here. What I want to do is I want to take, I'm going to make all my Z's go to the right and have all my Y's basically go forward. Okay. And that way they'll all be in the correct manner. So I'm looking at this Z, and I actually would like it to be the other way. All right. So I'm going to try and select it here. Q. There we go. E. And then what we do is you only rotate on the X. So I can just rotate this around till it's basically, hopefully you can see, it's perpendicular. So it's, I like to imagine it's like a pin, and it's going to rotate on that pin. And my pin is the Z axis. So it's going to go a little bit more like that. Okay. So that's what we're looking for. Now I need to do the same thing here. A neat little trick that you can kind of do. See, it's not letting me click on it. So you might need to like click and drag over it. A neat little trick you can do is use a little bit of mel. So if I go down here where we can type in mel, if you type in, this is a mel command, rotate, just the word rotate, then space -R, which means relative. It's a flag. This is mel coding. They use flags. I think other things use them as well. And then it's going to be XYZ. It needs a thing, right? So X is the first one. So in this case, I'm just going to type in 90 to make it easier. Then 0, space, 0. Okay. Then semicolon. Then you hit enter. It's going to rotate 90 degrees. In this case, it's actually going to be the wrong direction, but I'll just do it twice. Like that. You can see it rotated. So now I rotated 90 degrees. What I'm going to do is click down here, hit the up arrow. It'll show me the last thing I coded, and I'll hit enter again. And you can see now it's going over there. So it's a little bit quick and easier. I could also just type in 180, but that way if I only need to rotate at 90, I can. So we'll do this, enter, click on this, up, enter. And now you can see that that is indeed in the right direction. Let's do the same thing here. Boom, enter. I really should have just done 180 because they're all going to be that, but whatever. Okay, so those all look good, right? So I have all my Z's going in that same direction. All of my Y's are going backwards. That looks good. You will notice that the end joint of whatever you have selected is always going to be at world, because the way that it is able to orient these joints is that they always go to the children. Remember I said before, that's why I make the end joints. This, the X will point towards. This has no child, right? It doesn't actually matter. You can just literally leave it like it is, but it kind of bothers me for whatever reason. So I'm just going to manually make X go that way, but you could also just leave it alone. But just be aware the last one is going to be at world orientation, meaning the same as our world. Okay. Then we're just going to go ahead and do this guy here. Boop. And that one looks fine, looks fine, looks fine, looks fine. We're going to grab this one, and I'm just going to hit up, and I'm going to type in 180 because I'm getting sick of typing it twice. And enter. Okay, so that did 180. I'm just going to go right up here. We'll click on this one, and I'm just going to hit the up arrow and enter. That'll make that 180. And then we'll click on this, up arrow, enter. And this one we're going to have to manually rotate once again. So we'll just put Z across like so. Okay. And then X, or we'll rotate up like that. So that X is pointing up and Z is to the right. Good. And we're going to do the same thing with the jaw. Come on. There we go. And I'll hit this up arrow, enter. So jaw is to that side. Same thing with the jaw end joint. Again, it doesn't actually matter, but whatever. It's just, and that, you could be more exact with the way that we're doing this as well. I'm just choosing to just do it this way because I don't care that much. Now the eye, actually, believe it or not, we're going to leave that at world. The reason for that is because we're going to be using an aim constraint, and so I'd rather just have Z be the front of it. So we're going to leave that one as it is. Because it's kind of a one-off anyway. All right, so now we have the arms here. So what we have to do is think about what is the main axis, what is the main way that this shoulder is going to move. And so you can make an argument, it barely rolls at all, so that's not even a thing. You can make an argument that its main rotation is this way, or that it's up and down. I actually like it as up and down personally. I feel like I do a lot of shoulder shrugging as opposed to swinging my arms side to side. It does do that as well. It doesn't do very extreme motions anyway, so I don't think it's going to matter. So I'm actually going to leave that the way it is. Now, this one, on the other hand, if you look currently, its main rotation is currently the main thing is for the arm to swing side to side. And if you look, you can see, imagine there's a pin stuck in there that it's rotating around. Right now it's set to Y. That I do not want. So I actually got to rotate this so that it is pointing straight. And I'm looking at the arm, see how it's kind of bent like this. So I'm actually going to go a little bit more like that. Good. Now, we're going to do the same thing here, right? So the elbow, definitely, that's a hinge joint, right? That only goes in one direction. So that also should be like that. Go a little bit more like that. I think this needs to go a little bit the other way. A little bit more there. Okay. Wrist is sort of a toughie. The main thing I'm going to do, because notice that this is at world, that's because it was an end joint. We didn't actually draw it towards anything. So first I'm going to just go ahead and make sure that the X is pointing in that general direction. And then I would say the main way that a wrist rotates kind of this way, not this way, because it's an ellipsoid joint. So it's not really a ball of socket. And then this way, oops, am I on the right thing? Yeah, I am. Just looked like it was rotating weird. Come on. A little bit more this way. All right, that's fine. And then for these, it's mostly obviously curling, right? So I'm going to think of the how it would best curl. So I'm just going to make sure that the thumbs are pointing, that the thumb and the other joints are pointing in the right direction. I'm actually going to turn this on for a second so I can kind of see it a little bit better. Okay, so this has got to go, come on, come here. There we go. A little bit more that way. Turn that back off for a second. Okay, go here. And then this has got to go like so. This guy's got to go like so. And then once again, the end joints don't matter, but it's just going to bother me if I don't do it, which is just like kind of stupid and pointless. It's a waste of time, but I'm doing it anyway. Okay, so same thing here, right? So all these fingers are going to curl. It's going to curl in this way, so I just make sure that my Z is pointing in the right direction. So we're just going to make sure it's going like that. Because you can see these are kind of all over the place. So these ones in particular are going to be really bad because of the way that we did that. Even if the other method I had discussed before, that projected centering, had worked, it still wouldn't have been exactly right. So you would still have to do quite a bit. So I just want to make sure that when I look at this finger, right, it's got to curl this way. I want to make sure that that Z is pointing out so that it's what I want. So we'll just go like this and make sure all of the fingers are going all in the same direction. Like all the Z's are going in the same way. It doesn't matter that much whether they're going to the right or left, as long as they're all going to the right and left. I mean, you could be a little more anal about it. Be like, oh, I want to make sure all my Z's are positive when they're curling, when it's doing flexion versus extension. But, and, you know, that would be valid. But I don't really care that much. I just want to make sure that they're all going in the same direction, so that they're not some of them being positive and some of them being negative. This will matter. This in particular, believe it or not, actually, out of all the ones that we're doing, the hand orientations are actually going to matter the most. So you really need to make sure that these are going the right way, because we're going to animate these in FK mode, which means we're just going to rotate directly onto the joints with very little extra rigging involved on them. So I just want to make sure that these are, actually go back out. I think this one should go back out a little too, because it's a little twisted. Okay. So notice that all the Z's are pointing that way. Is that all of them? Okay, that's all the joints. And so what I want to show you is I'm going to turn this, I'm going to go back into object mode. So now you'll see when I go here and I select if I select all the joints here, when I rotate on X, it will curl in. And you can see it's a little bit crooked. So I didn't do a great job on that. I might make some adjustments on that. But see, it'll rotate. Oh, I only grabbed the first one. This one and that one. And you'll see they'll all curl in the same direction. That's what we want. If you notice it's like curling in like side to side or like backwards or something, then you need to fix that. Okay. So we will call that good. I think that's mostly okay. Yeah, so now what we're going to do is I'm just going to take these joints and flip them. So it's pretty easy. All you're going to do is you select the base joint, so not the one in the center, but the next one over. So in this case, I'm going to grab this clavicle. You're going to go to skeleton. You're going to go to mirror joints, hit the option box. And then you'll see there's, I'm just going to reset. There's what to mirror across. So it's kind of confusing because you're like, oh, X, Y, Y, Z. Because usually it'll say like negative X or positive, or, you know, say X, Y, or Z. Just look at it as basically there's imagining there's a plane. So imagine there's a plane made on X and Y. So that would be a plane made across this way and up and down, which means it would actually take this and flip it this way, like in front of it. So what I would say is it's actually kind of the opposite of what you're thinking. So if it's X and Y, that means this is going to flip on Z. And if it's YZ, it means it's going to flip on X. And if it's XZ, it means it's going to flip on Y. So we want to flip on X, right? Because there's my X. I want to flip it that side. So I want the middle one. Now there's behavior and there's orientation. The difference with them is that I will show you what they are actually. So for this one, just do behavior, and then I'll show you afterwards what the difference is. What we want to do is we want to search for underscore L underscore for left underscore R underscore. So it's going to put anything that has an L in there and replace it. We want to make sure we don't just put L, because otherwise it's going to be Rogan arm, right? Or it'll be, right reg, okay, when we go to do leg. So it's underscore, because it's going to look for that complete thing. And that way it'll do a better job. So underscore L underscore, and then R underscore, or underscore R underscore. And then just hit apply, since we're going to be doing on the other one. And it should flip right across. So just go ahead and select the leg and just hit apply on that one as well. Okay, so just make sure you grab that one. And then the eye, we're actually going to be doing differently. Select the eye ball joint and switch that one to orientation. Okay, and then hit mirror. Now I'm going to show you what the difference is. When you do orientation, what that means is that when I select the two joints, they are both going to rotate in the same direction. See how they're both rotating the same exact way? It's just that literally it's just the same. Whatever this one's doing, this one's doing too. When you do behavior, it does a little bit of that. So, but it almost does opposites. So if I go like this, see, they do the opposites. If this was orientation, when I would rotate this one that way, this one would also rotate in that direction, right? So imagine if you were like skiing, right? Both legs will ski this way and that way, like you move together. But most of the time, if I'm doing like, let's say cheerleading or something, right? I'm jumping up or doing a pirouette or something, they're going to move opposites. Oops. Now, some of it isn't entirely. You can see Z's go the same way. So you want to use behavior, not orientation, except for the eyes. And the reason why is that the eyes, right? If I'm looking to the left, they both look to the left. They both look to the right. But usually with the arms, if this arm's going up, this one's also going up, right? And like they will kind of work in tandem. If I'm clapping, they both move inwards. They won't both move to the right and both move to the left. Okay. So that should be good, and then we will use this as the basis for our rig. Okay, spend a lot of time on this. Make sure you do a good job, because it's going to have a significant effect on the results. So good luck.